For those who saw the plenary, I'm going to repeat a bit of things because there are a lot of new faces here. I am from the League of Independent Activists, and our short name is India, which is not showing here. It's not the X, this is not the logo. We're a bit more creative than that. We're starting a new campaign in the Arab world. Before I start talking about the campaign, I'm going to repeat a bit of the things that I spoke in the plenary. Next slide, please. Well, first thing, the Arab world. No, that's not it. The Arab world. A lot of people don't know what the Arab world is. First, the Arab world is not the Middle East. The Middle East is something totally different. This is the Middle East, and it includes Iran. And Iran is not an Arab country. Middle East also includes Israel, and Israel is not an Arab country. The Arab world is all the way from the Arabian Peninsula all the way to Morocco. And it includes 23 countries and more than 300 million people, which is around 5% the global population. And the area is what unifies the Arab world. What defines an Arab country is that the Arab language is the something that combines together. The Arab world is different from the Islamic world as well. It's only 25% of the Islamic world, and there is, for example, Lebanon and several other countries are not considered Islamic. That means the population not only consists of Islam. In Lebanon, there are 45% Christians, for example. This is important because it has relations to the climate change debate and the influence of the Arab world. So after this introduction, next slide please. The major thing that links us to the climate change is that we've, as I said in the plenary, we are a major source of oil. 11 countries with substantial oil reserves. 4 countries are among the top 10 oil exporters. Saudi Arabia alone holds around a quarter of the proven oil reserves and is the biggest exporter, around 4 giga barrels. Yeah. And we all know the role of oil-producing countries in climate change, but the issue we don't know what are the commitments of oil-producing countries in the climate change issue. That is, you know that the biggest increase in renewable energy technology did not happen with the climate change debate. The biggest innovative period in renewable energy, which has caused a mass distribution of renewable energy, happened in the 70s after the 1973 Arab oil embargo. So this is a very important thing for us to learn in the climate debate, that there are 2 ways to reduce CO2 emissions, either to stop the developed world or the consumers from using oil, or you can just turn off the tap, which has happened in 1973, and it increased oil prices a lot, and there was a huge economical inflation in some countries. But when the crisis happened and the countries had no choice but to act, like the US, innovation in renewable energy started to come very fast. So it shows us that there is a solution if they have to do it. When they had to do it, they did it. All the technologies now used in renewable energy was developed in 1973, from between 1973 to 79, because of the oil embargo. And now we're benefiting from that period. Otherwise, we wouldn't have all these solar technologies, wind and solar, the way they should be. The way they are now is because of 1973. So this is just to tell you how oil is important. And by the way, the oil-producing countries in the Arab world are shaping the energy scenario in the world more than anyone else. Next, please. Another thing that the Arab world is very rich of is renewable energy. And as I said again in the plenary, we are the richest area in renewable energy. We are so rich that we can actually satisfy the world demand by just using 5% of our desert. But we're not only rich in solar energy. We actually have one of the best wind sites in the world, especially along the Red Sea coast in Egypt. One of the highest wind speeds, averaging around 15 meters per second. This is the average, and higher. Also here in Morocco and several other places. And we are able to supply, and there is actually a plan. There are a lot of people working on it, just like TREC, one of the organizations working on this issue, is using the renewable energy in North Africa and the Middle East to supply the rest of the world. This is actually taken from the ministry in Algeria. This is a plan that a lot of people are working on it, and a lot of organizations, non-governmental and governmental and intergovernmental, to actually build concentrated solar power plants all over the Arabian desert and export primarily first to the European countries, but also there are plans to supply Asia and Africa. So this is the role. We have a role to play in the problem, posing the problem with our oil, and we have a role to play in the solution, which is renewable energy. Also we are linked to climate change through impacts. The main climate impacts in the Arab world is on water and agriculture. We are already a country that's suffering a lot from lack of water resources and little agricultural land. This is a picture of for sea level rise on the Nile Delta. This is the Nile Delta. The Nile Delta, which is only 3% of Egypt, is the economical hub of Egypt. Without the Nile Delta, Egypt does not exist. Because of climate change, sea level rise, up to 20% of the Nile Delta will be underwater. Here it includes cities. We're talking about Alexandria, the great Alexander who went to North Africa. Okay, also where the Rosetta, the famous Rosetta rock was found, it was in Alexandria. And also the Nile that actually built the Nile Delta might dry because of climate change. This is one example of the impact, but actually up to 20% of agriculture will vanish from our region, and our primarily economical income comes from agriculture. So we are pretty well hit by climate change. There's another important issue, is that we don't know exactly the climate impacts in our region. Most studies have been done on the polar regions, on the impact on polar bears and the impact on Europe. But in our region, we still don't know the exact impacts, what is happening to us, exactly to each country, to each region, what will happen to the tribes in the Sahara, all the indigenous people, our agriculture, our water resources, our forests. We do have forests in the Arab world. And the last thing is that the Arab public has no clue what climate change is, and they definitely don't know anything about what the impact of climate change on them. They don't consider it as a major problem. No one is worried about it. It's something that's going to happen in 50 years, and we can work on it in 49 years. Next slide, please. Arab world and climate politics. This is a very interesting subject. Well, again, we know the role of Saudi Arabia in the climate negotiations and how they've been actually stopping text. In the last IPCC report on impacts, they have removed crucial graphs from that report. It has been watered down primarily because of Saudi Arabia. Although, I mean, do you know this quote? It's a famous quote from a Saudi, interesting. This is before the climate debate started, actually. I think if they knew what's going to happen, they wouldn't have said this. It's for another reason, but the previous oil minister in Saudi Arabia, Sheikh Zaki Yamani, said the Stone Age did not end for lack of stone, and the oil age will end long before the world runs out of oil. Although what they're doing now, they're not applying the statement given by the oil minister. And the Arab Arab League has a major influence